to Meet the Experts. This is Casey Pacheco, your host, and I am so excited because this week we have a bomb nurse entrepreneur. She is an author. Welcome in Cheryl Field. She is the author of Prepared. We are going to ask her some rapid fire questions today because this is for the caregivers out there. So this is for those who are going through the healthcare system and saying, what on earth is going on? This episode is for you. So stay tuned. Welcome, Cheryl.
Hey, Casey. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a great podcast. I'm ready for your rapid fire questions.
Okay, so the first question I have for you is based on your background. What made you compile this book, Prepared? What was your inspiration?
Oh, Casey, that's a fantastic question. You know, I was in the senior care space as a provider, knowing what the rules and the regulations and the standard of practice was for 20 plus years before one of my family members showed up in that space and I had to stand in as an advocate. And let me tell you, when you come in as an advocate and you see it from the family's point of view, you really see the gaps in care provision and information and education. And to be honest, I wrote my book because I was really pissed off. Like I was so frustrated with what wasn't happening. And here's what happened for me. I showed up frustrated. I realized that didn't work. I had to come up with a different approach. I had to show up differently as a advocate and a family member. And I actually born the product of Prepared, a healthcare guide for aging adults from that perspective. So knowing what should be happening, but seeing what wasn't, and then how do you show up? What questions do you ask? What is going to happen? I want to empower caregivers and their loved ones to know what's going to happen because the system isn't going to tell you.
Yes.
And it just seemed so wrong to me that we weren't empowering and educating and informing the very consumers of our care. And I know and felt really strongly and passionately about putting that knowledge, that expert guide, those tips and that recipe style content in writing so that others would be able to be guided by an expert because the system wasn't going to guide them.
So my question for you, what's the difference between Prepared and the experience a patient will have with a patient care navigator?
Oh, it's a great question. And so, you know, a patient care navigator will kind of take you a half a step at a time. And Prepared is actually going to show you from where you are to where you want to get to, all the twists and turns that might come. So everybody wants to get back home. You know, you have a sudden change in health and you end up in the emergency room and right away you want to get back home. But Prepared helps you to see the advantages of maybe a short stay in the hospital, a short stay in rehab, and then getting back home and that entire journey versus a care navigator who is going to, you know, show you one or two steps ahead at a time. And this really informs both the family and the patient. They know what to expect. They have the questions to ask. It's not being dependent on a care navigator to ask questions and say, oh, I didn't know that. I'm actually filling in those gaps and informing the patient, you know, hey, here's the skilled nursing space. Here's what a care manager, case manager, care navigator is going to do. Here's the director of nurses. Here's their title. Here's their job. Here's what they do. Here's how you interact with them to get what you need out of that part of the health system and move to the next portion of the system. It's a very different perspective. I really came into the work wanting to give people a portable system of advocacy that they can take with them on every step of their journey.
So now you have been a nurse for almost like 36 years, maybe longer. So you've been a seasoned nurse and you've been an advocate. I have a question to ask you. From being on the side of advocacy as the person who had to speak up on behalf of others and probably even yourself, and then also being on the side of being a provider or a caregiver, knowing, okay, I'm working with limited resources, I can't explain to you as much as I would like to. Would you say there is an art and a skill to advocacy?
I think advocacy is number one, it's empowerment. And when we give caregivers a structure for thinking how they advocate, and I jokingly say, I'm teaching them to become their own bitch, right? We kind of joke about that, but bear with me. BITCH. It's an acronym for a system of advocacy. So as an advocate, you come into your role bringing information. Maybe you're bringing advanced directives. You're bringing knowledge of your loved one. Now, in the I phase of advocacy, you gather new information from the providers, right? You've got a loved one, they're in the emergency. What's the new information that you can gather? What's changed in their health? And then you start to talk about the T, the BIT. Here is where we take control. So you have the information in the advanced directive, you know your loved one, you've gathered new information. Let's start making sense of that. You have to take control. You have to move into the C, which is collaborate and communicate. What does your loved one want? What are the options? Collaborate with that provider, learn from them, but also continue to speak up for that person that you love. Because your ultimate goal, which is the H, is to get back home. However people define that, we all long to be home. Whether it's assisted living, independent living, my own house, a 55 plus community, we want to be back to that place that we call home. And our advocates help us to move through the system, get what we need from those providers so that we can arrive back in a place of home. And so throughout my book, Prepared, I remind the reader, hey, by the way, what we're doing right here, this tip that I've given you, that's the T in the acronym, right? That's the taking control phase. When you call the hospital and you ask this question, what are my loved ones' orders? When did they last receive those meds? That is you taking control, right? But if we make that call, Casey, we prevent medication errors, right? Now, the provider may not love that you're calling them every day, but I'm going to tell you as an advocate, I have learned that these are essential advocacy steps. I talk about it on page 35 in my book. If you have a loved one in the hospital,
can you get
these lists? Like, here's a list of questions right here in the book. Do this every day, because if you don't, it's like a recipe for success. If you don't take these advocacy active steps, your loved one will suffer consequences. We don't want them to suffer.
So let's get an exclusive for Meet the Experts. We're gonna have you read those tips. I'm just gonna be quiet and have you, the author, read the tips. This is a bonus feature.
Okay, so here is my favorite. Okay, when someone in your family becomes ill, there's typically one person who's dealing with all of the communication, right? Now, you and I are nurses. We typically are the one, and we are overwhelmed. So I call these my sick day rules. It is a single chat that you have created with permission of your loved one in advance. So your dad, my mom, whoever needs to know, hey, if you go into the hospital, this is the group I'm going to communicate with. And with their permission, I set up this one group chat. So again, in my book on page 36, when someone's in any institution, right, and you're sort of, how do you thrive in an acute setting? It's so hard. I say, listen, determine one member of your family to be the key contact with the health provider. They don't have time to talk to more than one of you, right? Determine one. Ask the provider if there's a family portal where you can see details of the care provided in the electronic medical record. Get that login. You don't have to call them for the silly questions, right? Get logged in, look at that information. Ask for a phone number, a name, and a role of one person you can call with questions from that provider. Create a group text message in your phone where you will text updates. And I do not go outside of this list. So if you have a family, let's say 5 or 6 siblings, plus maybe there's a close uncle or an aunt, right? And it's your dad in the hospital. It's so common for them to go around this group and be like sending you an individual text saying, hey, no, really, tell me this about my loved one. No. As the person who's coordinating all of that communication, you have to insist that your family members communicate in this group text. It's exhausting otherwise. All their questions go in this one group. All the answers go in this one group. And I tell people, listen, I get it. Not every family gets along. Not everyone in the family gets along. But here's the deal. That's why I call them sick day rules. You can go back to not liking each other when your loved one's out of the hospital. I don't care. But when they're sick, this is a gift. Think about this. This is a gift to your loved one to know that even though their 5 children don't get along, when they're in the hospital, their 5 children are going to communicate. No one's going to be left out. They don't have to be stressing and worrying, oh my gosh, did Johnny get the update, right? None of that, because they understand that you as a family, you function differently when your loved one is in the hospital. And that is a gift to them. And so this is a really important tip that I give to all families, all caregivers. It's a gift to the one person who's coordinating. It's usually me, right? It's a gift to the provider. They don't have time to talk to multiple members of the family. And frankly, I found mistakes happen when they do. They give a little bit of data to like me, and then they tell something different to my brother. They assume we're talking. If we're not, then the next update I get is incomplete. And this is not fair to your loved one. It's not fair to the provider who's really trying to do the best they can with your loved one. So again, these communication tips are really important.
Well, thank you for sharing those. Those were absolutely amazing. You know, Cheryl, I'm thinking you are a nurse, so you wrote it from the perspective of, as nurses, we love to educate and empower our patients. But as just being very vulnerable and transparent, and I'll give you a little backstory. So I was telling patients how to prepare for a doctor's visit. And then I would go to the doctor's visit and I'm like, Casey, you need to use your own medicine. So would you say this is good for even caregivers where they're like, I know all of that stuff she puts in there. But when you get into when you get like panic or your loved one, everything goes out the window. Would you say it's helpful for them too?
Casey, in April, I was traveling with my husband. We were in Las Vegas at a work event. I had a sudden change in health and I had to go to the emergency room. And I always carry copies of my book. So it was in my bag. And I said to him, get the book.
Yeah.
And we're going to the emergency room. And so on page, 26 of the book is a checklist of things to bring to the emergency room. Now I'm in the bathroom. I'm very ill. The paramedics are coming. And he said to me, I've been through the book. I have everything. We're ready to go. It absolutely works. During fight or flight, you cannot think. You're absolutely right. When it's yourself, your body moves into fight or flight, which is a panic response. We cannot think. And so it's a time for us to really put into practice what we have already learned, which is why I called the book Prepared. As we age, these moments happen. They are facts. It's a fact. We will have sudden changes in health.
I love that you say you talk about the nervous system. I do a lot of deep nervous system work with my clients, and we have this in our subconscious embedded that not until the room is on fire are we ready to act. So someone might be looking in and say, "That's a really really cool book, but we don't need that right now. Maybe in the future." But I love how you bring the nervous system in, because when you're in the thick of it, that's not the time to prepare with the book. You have to the book helps you to get prepared. Am I correct?
You're absolutely right. And what I love about the intent behind my writing, I want people to buy the book and I want them to read chapter 1 and take action in chapter 1, which talks about getting ready for a sudden change in health, right? Advanced directives, lists of medications, activity of daily living indexes, understanding pain, really transitioning and communicating that information within your group, right? So it's not just, you're not the only one who knows your advanced directive, but it's on a thumb drive, it's in your pocket, your daughter has her copy. Like, do the work in chapter 1. And then I hope you never need chapters 2 through 7. But actually, what I can tell you is every single person will need chapters 2 through 7. And it's kind of like a fire drill, right? We have fire extinguishers, we have homeowners insurance, we know where we're going to meet in the yard. We hope we never need that. But in the nursing home, we practice fire drills, we practice evacuations, so that when it happens for real, we can be calm, we know where the instructions are, and we trust the instructions. And that's really what I want people to get out of this book is keep it on your shelf, wait for that phone call. You're going to get the phone call. And when it comes, just go to the book, turn to the page and say, okay, we're headed to the emergency room. And that tells me, I'm on page 27 now. And I've told people that have, colleagues and friends that have reached out to me and said, oh my gosh, this happened to my dad. He's had a stroke. He's in the hospital. They're sending him to rehab. I said, listen, go to Amazon, download the digital version. I need you to only read these 8 pages, right? Just read page 35 to 42 or 45 and call me tomorrow and we'll go step by step by step.
Okay, Cheryl, I have to be very transparent here with you. So, viewers, I am not getting paid for this book. This is not an affiliate anything. This is literally, I have nurses, I have experts coming on, and I fully endorse Cheryl's book for 2 reasons. One of the most costly things. So I deal a lot with energy. So if you don't want something in your energy, you're not going to call that experience in. But if you are unprepared, you will spend so much money in healthcare. Just the time you take to get all your stuff together to make decisions. What you have done, Cheryl, is that you have collapsed so much angst of the healthcare system in your book, so that when someone has a very crazy experience, they could be ready for it. But my second thing here, why I really endorse your book, and I really want nurses to help me, what you have done is that you have taken your expertise and you have put it in a form where you can sustain yourself economically, but you can also share your years of experience without everyone calling you every second, feeling like you have to be there for everybody. And it's something as nurses, anything happens, they're looking for who's the nurse in the family. Now they can say Cheryl, but now go to her book. She already told you what to do. You could reference your book in a text message. This is the smartest thing I have ever seen. And I just think as a nurse, like, you had to be thinking about yourself. We talk about self-care and burnout. You had to be thinking about yourself and how you want to share in a way that fills you and not depletes you. Could you
Mhm.
say something about that?
Yeah, no, Casey. So you are completely correct. And, I was supporting my mother back in 2009. And now for the listeners, in 2009, the cell phone plans were by minute by carrier. So I had a BlackBerry for work, and I had a flip phone that was personal. And I had one sister that was on like the flip phone carrier and one sister on the BlackBerry carrier. So here I was traveling for work. My mom had taken a turn for the worse. We had discussed going a big transition, going on to hospice. And I'm trying to explain this to two of my sisters. Now I have two phones on each ear and they're just listening, and I'm trying to educate because of the way that cell phone carriers worked and the minutes. I mean, imagine the craziness of this, right? And I remember I was doing some work for Good Samaritan, and I was out at a restaurant and a bar that night, way in the back. Tears are coming down my face. I'm trying to explain to my two sisters on two different cell phones, like a crazy woman, how my mom had to go on to hospice. We were focused on comfort only, da da da. And you couldn't be more right about the burnout for the nurse. Um, I am always the person called. And my husband was the one who said to me, "You keep saying this stuff over and over and over. Why don't you write some of it down?" And so many of my family members, just like you said, they have the book. They have lots of little marks in the book, and they will run around in the hospital advocating for their neighbor or their loved one without calling me. It's brilliant.
Amazing. I think it's amazing. I wish the book well. I wish it does well because I love seeing things that are win-win-win. It wins for you. It wins for the people who read the book. It wins for the people who have the book in their possession. It's just an all-around win.
The healthcare system shouldn't be full of secrets. I am about being transparent and guiding. And, like the movie Liam Neeson, there's a movie Taken, and he's saying to his daughter on the phone, "Look, they're going to take you. Here's what's going to happen." And he tells her on the phone before it happens and gives her some tips for survival. And I feel like that's what's going on in my book. Like, I just feel that caregivers should know what's around the next bend, and they are capable of learning. They are capable of navigating, but they've never been in our world, and our world is very confusing. The healthcare space is so confusing. And I wanted to simplify that. I use a lot of humor. I use a lot of checklists. I like recipes as analogies for, here's 5 things you do every day, your loved one's in the hospital. Because I think, and what I've heard so many times from people who have read this book is, once you told me the questions to ask, I felt like I was in control. And you talk about that energy, right? Their anxiety goes way down. And they're like, "Yeah, I got most of this. I've got something to guide." And when you go into a care plan meeting and you have a book in front of you with a list of questions, and the healthcare provider says, "Oh, like, what you reading there, bub?" And they're like, "Oh, my sister-in-law wrote this, or my cousin, or my friend, or my neighbor, or nurse, or whatever." They are like so impressed at how well that caregivers, that advocate shows up in the space. And so, Casey, I'm going to tell you, I believe this is the most important thing we can do for caregivers, but also for providers, because nurses are so busy in the nursing home, the independent living, assisted living, the hospitals. If an empowered, educated advocate comes into their setting and says, I know my loved one's medications, they're this, this, and this, and I teach them that in the book, that nurse's job is better. It's easier. It is the best. I think it's one of the best gifts I could have given every nurse working shift tonight is an empowered caregiver. So they don't have to teach the same thing over and over and over again, but they have someone who comes in with some knowledge and learns a little bit more from them.
This is beautiful. I love what you did. I love your work. I fully endorse it. I wanted to ask you, as an author now that you're an author, if you were speaking to some younger nurses, what would you, as a nurse of 36 years and now an author, what advice would you give some younger nurses who are going in, caregivers on hair on fire, they don't have this book? What advice would you give them to younger nurses?
Advice I would give to younger nurses is to remember that nurses are incredibly smart when it comes to systems, right? And it's kind of like that analogy that says if you give someone a fish, they eat for a day. But if you teach someone to fish, they eat for a lifetime. Nurses, systems, policies, you understand body systems and feedback loops, and that what comes around goes around. And so people pay for information that you can write down that's systematic. So my book is a system of advocacy, right? And people will pay for systems. They'll not so much want to pay for just a one-time answer. So whatever your knowledge, your expertise, what it is that you as a nurse, and please don't ever think you don't have that expertise. Nurses, you have that expertise. Be courageous. Lean in. Put your knowledge into, this is a whole whopping 96-page book. We're not talking about, hundreds of pages here. This is very simple, boiled down truth, but it's a system. And for less than a co-payment at a doctor's visit, you can give that system to your reader. And that's the promise that nurses can give to a reader when they lean in with their voice from, I sort of teach a class on the continuum of your voice, but everything from posting on LinkedIn or commenting to podcasting to authorship to keynote, speakers and addresses. Nurses, you contain the knowledge of the systems. Sharing that knowledge is so empowering to the world. And I don't want nurses to ever be shy about leaning in and sharing what they know.
This is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I asked that question. Thank you for your beautiful work. Thank you for what you do. It took me 5 years to realize that business is not so much a product, but the ownership of systems. And you are right. We work in the system every day. We have systems. And so that's something that we should own our own identity. And this is why I do this show, to make that visible, to make the nurses visible, to make the real experts, the everyday experts visible for humanity to see. So I am so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for sharing. I am so I know your work is just a little bit different from what we've usually talked about changing healthcare, but it's a pivotal part for healthcare. My last question to you will be directed towards those who are not in healthcare. What words of advice would you give to people looking on and they are not in healthcare?
My best tip that I could give to anyone not in healthcare is to learn about yourself, understand what is your non-negotiable for self-care, for charging yourself. Whether that, I think about it as something simple, your cell phone. Your cell phone needs a certain cord, mine USB-C, to recharge. It is very clear. Nothing else is going to work. It will die. I believe every human needs to understand themselves at the level of what recharges you, and do not let that be negotiable. It cannot be negotiated away. When you commit to caring for a loved one, or you say, oh my gosh, I have to bring my mother home, I can't possibly put her in an institution. Please first identify what are your non-negotiables for your own recharging, your own health. That is the biggest mistake I see non-healthcare people making. They get, I don't want, maybe the word is guilt. They get kind of guilted. They think they're supposed to be Wonder Woman and do it all. And what happens is their battery dies. They do not know how to recharge. They don't have a USB-C cable. They no longer work. And they are the only person caring for a loved one. And when you do not work, the outcomes of care are disastrous for your loved one. So my best piece of advice for all listeners, figure out what really charges you up, what energizes you, and make sure you get that every day.
I think you might need to write a second book. Because that, I felt it, but I've lived it. Lived it. So, such good advice. I'm going to have you back.
I would love to do that. And just so you know, I have a second book coming out. It's, I'm helping to help people prepare to advocate for their aging parents and helping them to prepare for difficult conversations with their parents, because talking to your mom about stop driving, stop cooking, you can't set up your medications anymore, you shouldn't live by yourself, or all of those conversations are really hard. And I've come up with a workbook series so that the person can do it and the adult child can come up with their answers in preparation for the conversation. Really think about these hard conversations from a variety of perspectives. And so just to get people moving into action so they're not stuck, because I find people so stuck until it's, like you said, on fire. And then it's really too late. Really.
You are an angel. You are an angel nurse. Thank you so much. Thank you for being in the profession. Thank you for pouring into us today on this podcast. Listeners, I asked Cheryl Field all the questions I wanted. Now it's your turn. Please leave in the comments box any questions, any thoughts, or maybe some of this really resonates with you and you need to share, you want to share. Please leave it in the comments. I will make sure that it gets back to her. I want to thank you, Cheryl, for being with us tonight, today, this morning, wherever you are in the world. And please listen out for our next episode every Sunday at 4 p.m. Meet the Experts. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.